And now I would like to bring up Dr. Kendra Creer, who is the Arts Facet Chair for the Kent Area Chapter of the Links Incorporated. Kendra?
I'm actually the co-chair, and Rhonda Hilton, who is here, is my co-chair. Thank you so much for being here today. I would like to introduce our speaker. Mr. Byron Hurt is an award-winning documentary filmmaker. His acclaimed documentary film, Food Junkies, chronicled the history and legacy of soul food for PBS and is now screening on Netflix. A former Northeastern University football player, Byron is a published writer, anti-sexist activist, and lecturer. He is also the former host of the Emmy-nominated television show, Real Works with Byron Hurt. Since 1993, he has been using his craft, his voice, and his writings to broaden and deepen how people think about gender, race, sex, violence, music, and visual media. Hurt began his professional career with I Am a Man, Masculinity in America. His most popular documentary to date, however, is Hip Hop Beyond Beats and Rhymes. It premiered at the 2006 Sundance Film Festival and was later broadcast nationally on PBS Lens. In 2010, MSNBC's The Griot named the documentary one of the top 10 most important Black films of the decade. Hurt has been featured in various media publications from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Los Angeles Times, and Black Enterprise Magazine. We are very pleased to welcome Mr. Byron Hurt.
Thank you very much, Kendra. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Okay, we're going to try that one more time. One more time. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Oh, didn't that sound so much better? Thank you all so much. It's an honor for me to be here. This is my first time in Massillon, Ohio, and I'm joined by my beautiful daughter, who is my road buddy, Masai Amor Hurt, who is a homeschooler, and part of her education is traveling with me from time to time so that she can get to know and understand the country and just build out her frame of references as a young person. So I'm honored to be in the presence of my daughter today, and I want to thank the Kent Area Ohio chapter of the Links Incorporated for extending the invitation to me. Rhonda Hilton, who is the co-chair of this committee, reached out to me and invited me to come out. And so I'm very thankful that I have a young cousin who values my work. And it's really great to see Rhonda and her husband Lamar and her children doing well in Kent. And so, and thank you all. Thank you all for coming, including the Massillon Museum, for providing the space and this gathering and giving us an opportunity to kind of hang out with each other for a little while. So I'm going to just give you a little bit of a background on who I am and the work that I do. Some of you may have heard of me, some of you may not have heard of me. So I'm gonna give you a shorthand breakdown of my career as a documentary filmmaker. This is gonna be real sort of, this is gonna be like the cliff notes of my career. I want to give you a sense of what I've done as a documentary filmmaker, but I just want to start out by saying that I'm someone who decided to follow his dreams and to live his passion. I don't know if anybody in this room has made that decision to do the same. Anybody in here following their dreams or living their passion? My daughter, I'm glad to see that. All right, Rhonda, a few other people, so your hand in the back. There's really nothing like having a really strong desire and a passion to do something that you love, do something that wakes you up in the morning. You don't need an alarm clock to wake up. And that's pretty much how I live my life. And so I'm really grateful to have been able to make that choice, to have the privilege to make that choice, and to actually follow my dreams and to live the life that I've wanted to live as a documentary filmmaker. I'm very passionate about making documentary films. I don't know why. I do not know why I'm so passionate about documentary filmmaking in particular. A lot of people ask me, when are you gonna make a real movie? And I say, well, documentaries are real movies. I love the genre, the art form of documentary filmmaking. They are really, really brutal to make. The process is a very brutal process, but the end result, when you actually get to see the final product of something that you created that began in your mind and in your mind only, and then it becomes something that you present to the world and to an audience, and they respond to it positively or negatively, or they laugh or they cry, or it makes them feel something. There's nothing more rewarding than that feeling as a documentary filmmaker. And so I love it. I absolutely love it. I just finished my most recent film. Actually, I made 2 films last year. One that aired on PBS in September, and another one that's going to air on PBS likely in late 2023 or early 2024. One film took me 10 years to make. The next film took me 1 year to make. So, but you know, I want to just share with you a little bit of how I got to the point where I make documentary films. So as you can see, I'm Byron Hurt. I've won a handful of awards as a documentary filmmaker. I'm also a writer. I've been published in several books as a published writer, and I've written several op-eds in various newspapers. I'm also an activist. So another thing that I do, in addition to making films, is that I have had a lot of experience traveling around the country, working with boys and men specifically to educate them about all forms of gender violence prevention and what boys and men can do to eradicate violence against girls and women. That's another story and another presentation. All right, but that's some of the activist work that I do. I'm also a lecturer. I lecture at a lot of colleges and universities. I am an adjunct professor at Columbia University in the film department. I've been an artist in residence at American University and a handful of other colleges. And so this is what I do. I like to educate, I like to inspire, I like to motivate young people, people of all ages. And so I've had a lot of experience as a lecturer traveling around this country that we live in. And so when I went to college, I wanted to be like these 2 guys right here. Anybody know these faces familiar? Anybody know who these 2 men are? Anyone?
My brain is dead.
Okay. So on the left here we have Ed Bradley, who used to be one of the hosts of 60 Minutes, is what he's probably best known for. Longtime journalist. And then on the right is Bernard Shaw. Both men have passed on. But when I was a young person in college, I majored in journalism, and I really wanted to be like these 2 guys right here. One of my goals was to actually be one of the hosts of 60 Minutes. But I really looked up to these guys. And they were there were only a handful of African-American male journalists who anchored television shows, right? And these were 2 of them. And these were 2 heavyweights that I really admired and I looked up to. And so I majored in journalism in college. Radio and television was my focus, my concentration when I went to college. And so I really worked hard as a student to get as much experience as I possibly could. I worked at all 3 television stations in Boston as an intern, as a production assistant, as a student, as a college student. And also wrote for the Patriot Ledger, which is a local newspaper in the Boston area. I actually had my first front page newspaper as a senior in college for that newspaper, which was a really big thrill. So I was on track to become a journalist and to be on television like Ed Bradley and Bernard Shaw. And then to get some additional experience, I was a disc jockey for my college radio station, which was another passion that I had. And I'm not sure if anybody knows who this woman is here. Anybody? Wendy Williams. Wendy Williams got her start working for that radio station, my college radio station in Boston. So I thought I was going to be a big star, okay? And then I took a class my senior year in college called Blacks in the Media and the Press, and it was taught by a professor named Dr. Elizabeth Hadley Freiberg, and she was tough. She's a really, really strong professor. She was really tough on us as students. And this class was sort of like it was like my first media literacy class. And Dr. Freiberg introduced us to a lot of books and writings that helped to deconstruct the images and the representations in the mass media, from film to magazines to TV sitcoms and so on and so forth. And it was a class that really opened my eyes to the ways in which African American people in particular have been represented in the media since the creation of media, right? Anybody know this filmmaker right here? Anyone? No, that's not Eddie Murphy. Did you say Eddie Murphy? No, that's not Eddie Murphy. Nope, that's not Spike Lee. Okay. You all should know this man. You should know his name. His name is Marlon Riggs, and I encourage you to write his name down. Marlon Riggs is one of the most courageous, fiercest documentary filmmakers of our time. And he made several documentary films, and several of those films my professor, Dr. Freiberg, introduced us to when I was a senior in high school. And when I saw the work of this man, Marlon Riggs, I was completely transformed. These are some of the films that he made. He made most of these films for PBS. So in school, in class, I watched Ethnic Notions, Tongues Untied, Color Adjustment, and then later on, I watched his final film, Black Is, Black Ain't. He actually passed before he completed this documentary, and his production team finished the film on his behalf. But these were all really, really great works. And when I watched Color Adjustment in particular, it really changed my life. It just changed the way that I watch television. The film deconstructs the images and representations of Black people in the media. And so when I watched this film, I said, I want to be like Marlon Riggs. I was a young student sitting in the class, kind of like you all are sitting right here. I watched the film and I was blown away. And I said, I want to have the kind of impact on young people and students that Marlon Riggs had on me. And so that's what set me out on my journey to become a documentary filmmaker. And also at that time in Boston, there were two other great documentary filmmakers. The man on the left, his name is Henry Hampton. The man on the right, his name is Orlando Bagwell. Henry Hampton is the creator of the seminal series about the civil rights movement called Eyes on the Prize. You may have that series here in this library, maybe you do. Orlando Bagwell worked as an apprentice for for Henry Hampton, and Orlando Bagwell branched off to become a filmmaker in his own right, created his own documentary film production company. And I actually interned for both of them for a very short period of time, just after I graduated from college. However, as an intern, has anybody interned in here before? Anybody? There's no money when you're an intern. That's starting to change now, but there was absolutely no money when I was a young intern working with these two men. So I had to stop and I had to get a real job after I graduated. This was another one of my mentors, Andrew P. Jones, and that's me on the right if you can detect the young man with no gray hair. But that was my college professor. His name was Andrew P. Jones, and he was also a documentary filmmaker as well as a broadcast journalist. He worked for several television stations, including Connecticut Public Television and Black Entertainment Television, BET, back when BET had its own news program. I don't know if anybody remembers, but BET had its own news program. But he was a documentary filmmaker. He was what they call a guerrilla documentary filmmaker. So he would go out, he would take his camera, he would travel to lands far away from home in other countries, and he would come back and he would edit his own films and he would put them out into the world. And so this is a great photograph of Andrew and me because it really tells the story about our relationship. He was my mentor, he was my professor. To make a long story short, for a certain period of time, he actually lived with me in my apartment, but that's another story. I'll tell you that one, maybe over some drinks in the back. But he was an incredible human being, and he was also fiercely intelligent. He was a concert violinist. He played concert violin for Stevie Wonder. He went to Phillips Exeter High School. He was a brilliant, brilliant man, and I learned from him. He taught me how to make a documentary from what they call package to plate. It was a really incredible experience. So then, my senior year, I wanted to make my own film. And so I told my professor, Andrew Jones, that I wanted to make my own documentary film. And the way that this happened is because I was working at WCVB in Boston, and I went out for a TV show. I wanted to be the host of the TV show, and I didn't get the job. I was so disappointed that I thought I deserved to get the job, and I didn't get it. And then I applied to be the producer of that same program. And I was one of the finalists to produce that show, and I didn't get it. And I was devastated. I was completely devastated. I was so devastated. On the way home from the TV station, I broke down and I cried as I was driving home. And on that drive, I decided that I wasn't going to allow anybody to determine my fate. So I decided to establish my own production company, and I named it God Bless the Child Productions. Does anybody know, or is anyone familiar with God Bless the Child? Okay, can you complete that lyric in the song? That has his own, right? And that's why I named my production company God Bless the Child Productions, because I wanted to have my own production company. And so I endeavored to make my first film as a college student. And I made this film. That's another couple of pictures of a young Byron Hurt. My father bought me that camera for Christmas. I begged for him to buy me this camera. It cost like $250, like a lot of money back then. And he bought that camera for me for Christmas. And just as you see it wrapped around my neck, for about 6 months, I walked around campus with that camera strapped around my neck. And I made my first documentary film. The name of the film was called Moving Memories, the Black Senior Video Yearbook. And I made that documentary because as a Black student attending a predominantly white university, there were a lot of trials and tribulations that we had to go through as Black students. And so I wanted to do something to memorialize the experience of being a student at Northeastern University, where I went to school. And so I came up with the idea of making this documentary film, and that's just a copy of the cover of my production notes for that documentary. I was such an ambitious young kid. That was the first flyer that we made for the film, and we put flyers up all over campus. It was a really incredible experience. Anybody know what that thing is in the middle right there? Photo of? Anybody? That's what we used to package old VHS tapes in. That's a VHS cover. And I remember on the premiere of my film, Andrew P. Jones was still working on the film. He was still editing the film the night of the premiere of the film. And I'll never forget this. I was standing up in front of the audience. It was a packed house. It was way more people than is in this room right now. And Andrew Jones bust through the door, right, with that videotape in his hand, and he ran down the middle of the aisle and handed it to me, right before the premiere, and I put it into the VCR player, and that's how we started the premiere night for my film, Moving Memories. And on the right, that was an official invitation that I sent out to the entire class of African-American students to come over to our library to watch the film. And that was the day that sealed my fate. Because, as I said, the room was packed. We had popcorn that we served in the room. People laughed. People cried. My parents came up from Long Island, New York to come watch the film. And it was just like a beautiful experience. And that was like my first taste of having an audience watch a film that I created and respond to it. And that's when I knew, when I became 100% clear that I wanted to be a documentary filmmaker. And so I graduated from Northeastern. These are my parents, my mother and my father. My father is no longer with us. But this was a photo of me graduating from college. And so it was time for me to launch out on a career. And I wanted to go to film school. So I applied to Stanford University and I applied to NYU University. two of the best film schools in the country at that time. And I got rejected by both of them. Actually got rejected by NYU twice. No, I got rejected by Stanford twice. Now, I'm not bragging about that. That's nothing to brag about, okay? I was really dejected after I got rejected by those two schools because I really wanted to go to film school. But I did not allow that to deter me. I used those rejections as fuel, motivation. I added that to the fire burning inside of me to become a documentary filmmaker. And so I applied for a fellowship and I received funding to make my first professional documentary, which is called I Am a Man, Black Masculinity in America. And that film features and highlights African-American men from around the country who talk about their experiences being black and male in America. This film took me 5 years to make. It was a long process, and we put a lot of work into it. And I made a lot of mistakes. It's a film that I cannot even stomach to watch these days because it's just so crudely made, and it's poorly lit, and it's not really well shot. But it was my first attempt at making a documentary film, and I got some funding from an organization called the National Black Programming Consortium, and that funding was to help me complete the film and then have the film aired on PBS nationally. I was so excited about this opportunity. I thought that this was going to be my big break. And so I was very dejected the day that I received the rejection letter from PBS saying, "You have created an insightful and thought-provoking program. However," that's the most important part of the rejection letter, the however, "we have decided not to pursue it for the national schedule. Given the large number of submissions we receive and the relatively few slots available on our schedule, we are only in a position to consider very few of the worthy programs that are sent to us, and the process is very competitive." So again, I had big dreams, but this field, documentary filmmaking, is a very competitive one. So again, I just felt so deflated. I put so much of my own time, my own money into the project, and received this rejection letter. I had to take a job, a regular job, working in the media relations department at Northeastern. And I worked there for about 8 months when I finally decided, you know what, I got to get back to working in the field of documentary filmmaking. I want to pursue my passion. This is who I am. And I realized that the office that I occupied doing public relations was somebody else's office. It wasn't mine. And so I submitted my letter of resignation, and I moved home to New York, and I moved back home to my parents' house. I was about to become 30 years old. I moved back home to my parents' house, and I moved back into my old room. When I say my old room, I'm saying my old childhood room, all right, as I was about to turn 30 years old. And I decided to work for this gentleman. I sought this man out. His name is Stanley Nelson. He is an extremely incredible documentary filmmaker. I reached out to him. I showed him clips from my film, I Am a Man, and he gave me a shot. And he hired me to become a production assistant on one of his films called Marcus Garvey, Look for Me in the Whirlwind. And it was a great opportunity for me to learn from an older, more experienced documentary filmmaker. And I took about a year to just learn from him, to be his apprentice, to watch him, to observe him, to see how he talked to his crew and his staff, to see how he approached storytelling, to see how he interacted with his editor while he was editing the project. And I soaked up every single thing that I could learn from him like a sponge. And after working for Stanley, he actually wanted me to work on his next film with him, but I decided to branch back off again, and I made my next film, Hip Hop Beyond Beats and Rhymes. Now for this film, I went back to my parents' house, and I locked myself in a room, and I worked on the proposal, the treatment for this documentary for about 2 weeks straight. And I submitted this proposal and my treatment for this film to more than 26 funders, and I got 26 rejections, okay? I got rejected by one funding organization 3 times before they actually funded the film. They gave me all of the funding I needed for this film, and this became my breakout documentary film, which premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in 2006. So this was like my big breakthrough moment, and this is me with my family at Sundance before the premiere of our film. So I had tremendous lows and then a really tremendous high. The next film that followed was a film called Food Junkies that we'll be showing tomorrow. And this is another film that took me 5 years to make. Both this film, Food Junkies, and Hip Hop Beyond Beats and Rhymes both took 5 years to make. And as you can see, I won Best Documentary for this film. I won the CNN Best Documentary Award at the American Black Film Festival in 2006, and I also won Best Documentary at the Urban World Film Festival that same year, and it went on to broadcast on PBS nationally. Same with Hip Hop Beyond Beats and Rhymes, which was my first film to broadcast on national television. And then more recently, I just directed and produced a film called Hazing, which premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival in New York City last June and premiered on PBS in September, and is currently available to watch on pbs.org. My next film that's coming out is called Lee and Liza's Family Tree. And this film is about the journey, my family's journey to learn more about our oldest known matriarch and patriarch in our family, going all the way back to 1863. So the goal was to use DNA to try and see if we can go past 1863 to figure out who these two individuals, who happen to be my great-great-grandparents, who their parents were and who their parents' were. And we used DNA to help us along on that journey. That film is going to air on PBS Nova sometime in 2023 or 2024. I'll keep you all posted. And so, even though my journey started out rough and I received a tremendous amount of rejections, and I want to add this about the rejection piece. You know, anybody in this room who has done anything ambitious and who works in a field that's competitive, you have to be able to deal with rejection, people saying no, right? So for me, the goal of making documentary films is to get your film done no matter what. No matter who says no, you have to keep going, you have to keep pushing, you have to keep believing in yourself, and you have to keep believing in your dreams. And so from the time that I started out as a young aspiring documentary filmmaker, my films have been seen by well over 5 million viewers, and that's an estimate. It's probably more than that. TV One, which is a cable TV station, aired one of my films in more than 20 million households. The film was also shown on Aspire TV. I've had my film Food Junkies on the platform Netflix, which I'm sure most of you have some experience in watching. I've also been on Prime Video. I've shown my films at hundreds of film festivals worldwide. I've been to hundreds of colleges and universities and high schools showing my works. And I've also been a guest or a keynote speaker at conferences and grassroots organizations and museums like the Massillon Museum. And so that's just a little bit about me and my career, and I really hope that you all take a moment to come out tomorrow night for the screening of Food Junkies. We would really love to see you there. It's my honor to be able to show the film before this community. And I thank you all for coming to this event. I hope that you got a little something out of this presentation. I wanted to open things up for any questions. If anybody has any questions that you may have about anything that I said, my career in documentary filmmaking, the process of making a documentary film, any question that you may have. Oh, my daughter is the first one who has a question. Thank you very much, my daughter. Yes.
When you got rejected before you decided, like, this isn't going to stop me from pursuing my dream, did you ever, like, feel very depressed?
Yes, that's a good question. The question, my daughter's question to me is, when I got rejected the first time, was it the first time? All of the times, all of the times. did I ever feel depressed? Yes. Yeah, if I'm answering you honestly. But this is the way that I sort of internalize rejection. So each time it feels a little different when you get rejected. I have a 48-hour, like, get over it response, right? Yeah. So I generally take 48 hours to grieve and to be upset and to be all in my feelings about not getting the grant that I wrote. And then I do my best to move on and keep moving, you know? And as I said, I use rejection as fuel. It helps motivate me, you know? So as I told you earlier, I got rejected 3 times by the same organization. I'll never forget, when I got my first rejection letter from them, I called my mentor, Orlando Bagwell, whose image I showed much earlier with Henry Hampton, and I told him, I said, Orlando, I just got a letter of rejection from ITVS, which is the funding organization, and I told him that I was going to get a grant by them, that I was going to get funded by them. I was very, very determined. And so throughout, you know, over the years and throughout the process of receiving rejections, you just learn that it's just kind of, it comes with the territory, right? And a no is not necessarily a denial, right? Even though someone says no, it doesn't mean that, you know, your dream, you know, isn't possible. So, so for my film, Hazing, the one that I completed and aired on PBS in September, even though I'm an established filmmaker, what they consider to be an established filmmaker or a mid-career filmmaker, I received more rejections for that film than any of my previous films. It's why it took 10 years to make, because I had a sizable budget that I was trying to raise, the most money I had ever raised before. And so it was challenging to raise the money. And so I received a lot of no's. And so it can have the impact of making you question yourself, question your ability, or question if you're smart enough, or question if you're talented enough, you know, right? But you have to have a really, really, really deep belief in yourself, a deep-seated belief in yourself, right? And if you believe in yourself, then, you know, that's better than anyone else believing in you. Yes. I see your hand second. I'm going to get to the back of the room. Yes.
So when you were rejected by PBS, and they sent you that wonderful letter,
yes,
and many, many years later you go back and now you have films all the time.
Yeah.
Do they know that that was you?
Well, yes, that's a great question. Yeah, they know who I am. I mean, they know that was, you know, me, and that's how I started out in the PBS system. But right now, I have a great relationship with PBS, as you see. I mean, the past 3 films that I've made aired on PBS nationally. I have another film that's coming on soon, the one that I showed you about my family. So they are well aware of who I am within the PBS system, and they're very, very supportive of me now. And it was just a part of the growing pains of being a young documentary filmmaker. And you know, I'm grateful that I was able to grow beyond it.
But at least they told you in the letter why you were rejected.
Yeah, yeah.
Most places don't even do that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've received the same exact letter year after year after year from the same. I'm serious. That's not even a joke. Like, it's the same. I can just copy and paste and just, you know, put in a new document. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, you know, and you know, just another. I guess, triumphant moment or feeling is that I've shown my films at Stanford University and at NYU, the 2 schools that I got rejected from, right? I mean, I've been an invited speaker, and Stanford University actually brought me in to be an artist in residence for a full week, right? So I didn't get an opportunity to go to school there, but I was able to go back and to show their students my work. And that's perseverance for you. That's simply perseverance. I want to get to the back, and I see your hand down here. Yes, I'll take you and then you next.
Since you are working within the PBS family, I was curious whether you got to work with Mr. Henry Louis Gates when you did your family's genealogy, and if so,
how did that go for you? And I'd like to maybe hear how that worked. And if not, where did you go?
No, I have not worked with Mr. Henry Louis Gates, Dr. Gates. You know, I actually did not want to work with Skip Gates on his film, on that film, because I wanted my film to be separate and distinct from his brand and what he's doing. In fact, I haven't even watched his series, Finding Your Roots, because I didn't want to be influenced by it in any way that infringed upon my own originality as a filmmaker. But I have met him. I met him on an airplane once. Nice guy. But I don't have a working relationship with him.
How did you pursue it then? I mean, did you work through the library and genealogy societies? Did you have somebody to guide you with that? We have a wonderful genealogy society.
Oh, that's great.
So,
yeah.
You know, people here start there and then work their way through that if they want to do that.
So a lot of the research that we did was online. We also worked with and we commissioned the support of a biologist who was a consultant for the project. So we had about a 3-month research and development process in which we consulted with her. Her name is Dr. Jackson. She's a professor at Howard University. And so she was our main source. And then we just reached out to people who were experts in the field and we got interviews with them. And that was pretty much our process. So most of the process came online, but you know who were the best researchers for our film and the best consultants for the film? My family members. So, you know, we spent a considerable amount of time talking to family members, some in their 90s, about our family history. And that was one of the thrills of working on that project. Yeah. I see your hand back here.
Time for like one more question.
Can we take 2 quick ones?
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much.
If you have to leave.
I'll answer very briefly. Yes.
I had 2, but I'll only ask one.
Mm-hmm.
In the process of making your films, were you or your crew ever, did you ever feel like you were in danger or were you threatened or people become angry? What was being asked of them and how did you handle all that?
I remember when I was making my film, I Am a Man, Black Masculinity in America, Andrew Jones, my professor, and I were out shooting in Los Angeles. And, you know, we were shooting images of black men. There's a district in LA, Skid Row in Los Angeles. And we pulled out our camera and our tripod and it was like a swarm of people who just surrounded us because they were very keen or they were very sensitive to people coming to that area and taking photographs and shooting images of homeless people in that area. And that was the only time that I can think of. There may be a few other times where people who are unfamiliar with you become upset if they see you capturing their images without their permission. But I've never been in any real serious danger as a you know, when I'm operating a camera or when I'm out in the field working with the crew. Last question. Oh,
Yes.
okay. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any plans to become a mentor for other young black boys that may have a dream and
Absolutely.
have trouble reaching that dream? Do you have
Yeah.
any plans like My Brother's Keeper or anything like that
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
help them along?
Actually, somebody reached out to me about co-directing a film about My Brother's Keeper. That hasn't really developed into anything real yet, but someone did reach out to me about that. And just really quickly, I have been a mentor for a number of years now for other aspiring filmmakers across race and gender. I've been doing a lot of work with an organization called Working Films, which is based in North Carolina. Every year I go down there and I work with filmmakers for 1 week, and I help them develop their ideas and to provide them positive, suggested criticisms or critiques on their work. And I've also done a lot of work with the Southern Documentary Fund and other organizations, including Stanley Knight's organization, Firelight Media. And I do intend to create my own mentorship program with my own production company next year. So that's all the time that we have. If you want to reach me or you want to follow me on social media, you can follow me on these platforms, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and that's the information. I'll leave that up if anybody wants to take it down. You all have been really, really great and wonderful. I loved your questions. I loved interacting with you. Thank you so much for coming out. I hope that you'll come out tomorrow night for the documentary and bring friends, bring people, okay? Tell them to come along. All right, have a great afternoon. Thank you so much.